Welcome to More Precious Than Rubies, where we explore and celebrate the stories of women in our modern world. I'm Ariana, and in this special global season, we're exploring how women around the world are living out their callings in extraordinary ways. Today's guest is Estha Trouw, a local TV journalist and the executive director of Rehema For Kids, a nonprofit working in Kenya to rescue orphaned, abandoned, and abused children and provide long-term, trauma-informed care, education, and discipleship. Rehema operates a 20-acre campus and works to move children through a full pathway, not just to survival, but restoration and independence. Estha, thank you for joining me on the show today. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I am just thrilled.
Now, Estha, I do have to tell a little bit of a story to tell the audience kind of how I knew about you.
Yeah.
So Estha and I went to the same church a long time ago. And I remember when I was growing up and aspiring to be a journalist, my mom would tell me, there's this woman at our church, Estha Trouw, and she's on TV. And if you ever want to make it as a journalist, you should talk to her. And for whatever reason, I never got to talk to Estha before. But when I was prepping for this season, or even just people that I should interview, I was looking you up on LinkedIn, and I was just blown away to see that you were working with a global ministry, which was exactly what I was looking for.
Yes.
And we met over lunch and we got to talk about our passion for journalism and passion for global ministry. And so again, it's just so wonderful to have you.
Perfect timing, right? So finally we get to meet after all these years.
Well, Estha, to get us started, can you kind of tell us a little bit about your testimony? Again, when we were meeting for coffee, you were telling me kind of how this testimony is a huge part of your story and how you got involved with Rehema. So what parts of your journey most clearly prepared you for this work? And what do you think God was forming in you before you ever stepped into this role?
You know, that is such a great question. And as I was thinking about this, you know, sometimes in your life, you look at where you are now and you kind of go back and you say, wow, I see how God prepared me because of this and this and this. And that's exactly what happened. I came from South Africa, born in South Africa, raised there until I was 9 and moved to the States. And really my story is a story of redemption, it's a story of second chances, which is exactly what our ministry is about. You know, these little kids are rescued. They get a second chance at life. And I feel in a way that all of us kind of have a redemption story, but for me, it's so personal because coming to the States, we started over. New culture, new language, we left our family behind, and really, God walked along that very lonely time. My immediate family split up as well, so there was this void, and that God filled little bits at a time, brought the right people into my life, you know, revealed Himself in that way, and ultimately, I ended up understanding that the only thing that can fill any void in life is Jesus, and it was just such a beautiful thing to take me through difficult times and ultimately just showing me the only way that we can do this together is in this faith relationship. When I was 27, I didn't have a great relationship with my father, you know, after everything that had happened. And he ended up having a terrible stroke at 53. He was very young. And I sat on my dad's bed, and at the time I wasn't yet a believer, and I said, okay, God, and I didn't really think of it as a prayer. I just kind of said it. I said, okay, God, if you're there, give me a chance to make peace with my dad. And I just left it at that. And, you know, I went back to work in California. A couple of days later, I had to go back to work. And 2 weeks after that, I get a call from a news director in Pittsburgh that said they wanted to hire me as the main anchor in Pittsburgh. And I thought, well, that's strange. I wasn't looking for a job. I'm in California. None of it made sense to me. And then I went, and there in Pittsburgh, I met a photojournalist who was older than me, and we were in dangerous situations. And he would sometimes just say, stop, we have to pray. And I thought, what do you mean we have to pray? We have to protect ourselves, you know? And so I remember thinking, I don't know what he has, but I want that. I want this. And I ultimately understood that it was a faith that was just drawing me in, and he was modeling that. And so I asked him, I said, how do I get that? And he pointed me to a great non-denominational church in the area, and I ended up giving my life to the Lord there. But looking back, all of those things, God answered that prayer when I didn't even know it was a prayer. And he gave me a second chance to make peace with my dad. I got a job in Pittsburgh, which is 2 hours away from where my dad was living. And every weekend we got to see each other. We got to redeem that relationship and we had that second chance. So that was one example of the second chance that I had gotten from the Lord from early on. And it was just, to me, it was like, okay, I see that there's much more to the story than just what you see on the surface.
When I was listening to your story, Estha, when we were over coffee, it was just so amazing to hear about your passion for Africa. And I was talking to our last guest, Mitos Urhel, and her history with Thailand and how I have a close relationship to Thailand because I travel there for work. And same with Kenya. You know, it's fun to have that connection in common.
Yeah.
But for people who aren't familiar with Rehema for Kids, can you kind of paint a picture for us? So what does the model look like from the inside? How would you describe Rehema's pathway and what it means to walk with a child long-term on that journey?
Yeah. So let me start by saying, you know, the situation in Kenya with children who are orphaned and abused and abandoned, there are many reasons why those things happen. And so once we get a child placed with us by the Kenyan government, Kenyan Children's Services, obviously the first thing they do is make sure there isn't any other family that can take care of them, right? Aunts, uncles, cousins, all of that. And then if it's determined that there's nobody else, then they figure out which children's home is the best place to raise them. Okay. So when we get them, oftentimes there's a disability because kids are discarded if there's a disability. Oftentimes we get preemie babies. We get them, we do whatever we can physically to get them to where they should be at that stage of development. Yeah. And then really the trauma counseling is one of our big parts that we are focused on because a lot of these kids have gone through trauma that you can't even imagine. They have been left alone, so they'd have to find food, whether that's plants, just to survive. Some of them are starved. You can see their little ribs when they come to us. It is heartbreaking, but when they come to us, we do whatever we can physically, obviously, and then get them up to speed so they can go to school. Education is really, really important for obvious reasons for them to break that cycle of poverty. Yeah. But the most important thing that we focus on is that we teach them their value is not as an orphan. Their value is as a child of God. Even in the children's home, they know if another child's from a different tribe because they look different. And sometimes even the aunties and uncles who take care of them, there is some tribalism all over Africa. But the beautiful thing is that's secondary because primary, they are brothers and sisters in the Lord. If they can understand that throughout their lives, it's a game changer.
Yeah.
So we educate them on campus. We have a children's home and a school on campus up till 9th grade. And then by law, they go to high school. It's a boarding school. So they take a test, and depending on how well they do, then they go to that boarding school. It's a lot of pressure for the kids, right? And then we give them the opportunity to go to college or trade school, depending on what their abilities are. As a matter of fact, just this week, we found out that one of our not anymore. Boys. Not anymore. I know. I think of him when he's little. His name's Amos, and he got accepted into law school in Kenya. And we are beyond thrilled because to see them thrive from stories that you can't even imagine is just the most beautiful thing. It's really fulfilling and inspiring to work and be able to see a life redeemed and have a second chance where they can impact their community and their country, and not only for the Lord, but to make it a better place and just change that cycle of poverty.
A little ago, we were talking about how you took a recent trip to Kenya to visit the facility. And so can you tell us a little bit about that visit? You described to me that the drive felt heavy to you. You were seeing the poverty of the area for the first time, and then a shift happened when you arrived at the facility and when you saw the children at the gate come running towards you. So what did that contrast reveal to you about what Rehema is building inside of that space?
Yeah, that's such a great question. You know, I have been privileged to travel all over the world for work and for personal reasons. And I thought I had seen it all. And then when you get to rural Kenya, it's a whole other level of poverty. It is, you've seen it. You know what I'm talking about. Where you can drive for an hour and a half and all you see, it's dirt roads, it's mud huts. There's no electricity, there's no sewage, people don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yeah. And it is such a heaviness that you feel because there's no hope. I can see how people lose hope and how they have no ability to take care of children. You see how it's possible. And so when you get finally to our children's home and you arrive and the children know that there are guests coming. So they love the guests and they run up to the gate and they're waving and there's joy and it's this stark contrast that just catches your breath because you go, wow, you can feel the Holy Spirit here. You can feel God here. And it's not that God wasn't in the village. It's that you know that there is an intentionality about putting him in the middle of that, and the outpouring of that and the fruit of that is that these kids, they have nothing. They have each other and they have this joy that we hardly see even in developed countries. So it is a stark contrast. It's a beautiful thing. It also really makes you think and reflect as well.
Something that I've learned with working with people in other countries that even maybe just have the same opportunities that we do here in the West, a lot of times people in the West just don't understand other cultures outside of our own. And even on take missionary Sundays, for example, when maybe a missionary group of videographers went and they took video of a tribe in Africa, worshiping and doing church together, you as a Westerner can sit there and be like, wow, that's amazing that they're but you have no idea of how truly amazing it is until you see it with your own eyes. And so I think it's really hard for even just us to paint that picture for people who have never seen it with their own eyes. Video is an amazing tool, but it's nothing like being there in person.
And I would just, again, like I'm sure you've said to your audience before, is any chance that you get to go and see and experience and touch that, your faith will grow and you'll just be astounded by the blessings that you receive from being there. One of the things that when I went to Kenya last, I remember thinking, gosh, there's all these things that we need to do to provide for the kids and for the staff. And you have kind of your list in your head. And then by the time you leave, you realize they have blessed me so much more than I could ever bless them by the love and the faith and it's really hard, again, to describe, but I would invite you to come to our campus and see it. We're always bringing teams there. So if anybody's interested at all in that, we would love to host you.
Your organization notes that nearly half of Kenyan children have experienced physical, emotional, or sexual violence. So how does that reality shape the way in which Rehema approaches trauma counseling, which you mentioned before? It's very important to your organization, safety and restoration for the rest of their lives.
A lot of that is obviously stems from poverty. There are also other reasons why children get discarded. I mentioned one reason is because if there's a disability or if there's a rape or something like that. Children, teen moms are discarded sometimes out of their village because of that. So there are a lot of reasons why these children are either mistreated or abused or abandoned. So we've had babies that, and we don't know the circumstances, of course, but the babies have been thrown in a pit latrine, which is basically a hole in the ground and face down. So somebody walked by and heard the baby cry and they went in and retrieved the baby and turned them into children's services and we ended up getting the baby. And so what happens is a lot of our children, they find out what their story is when they're ready. Part of the trauma counseling is
interesting.
Is you have the counseling. They all know that they, were either unwanted by their family or not. They couldn't be taken care of. So at some point they're ready to go, okay, what was my story? And some of them are devastating stories where the parents abused them or, like I said, they were thrown away. One little girl was born premature. She was 1.5 pounds, which is unfathomable, size of a water bottle. And she ended up being, her name was Joni. She ended up being deaf, but we didn't know it for a while because she was so sharp. She just followed all the other kids. When kids sat, she sat. And so at one time, something fell, was really loud. And they realized she did not hear anything. And we found out she was completely deaf. We raised funds and we were able to get her a cochlear implant. And now little Joni, oh my gosh, that girl is going to run the show one day. She's a leader. She's smart. She is funny. She's adorable. And it's just so cool to be able to see that modern technology can help a child who quite honestly had no future. And now she has the world at her feet.
I'd love to know too, if you can kind of speak on it. When you're telling these kids their story later on in life, during this counseling sessions, I'm assuming, do you find that is healing to them, maybe giving them some closure, or is that more often harmful that they'll have to continue working through? Is there like kind of a percentage there that you find?
It goes both ways. We've seen both. But usually, even though they go through the trauma counseling, it's Mama Carla. She's the one who's considered mom to 240 kids. Could you imagine that?
No.
She's the one that sits and says, okay, here's your file. Here are the pictures from the hospital. Here's what we know.
Wow.
Here are your circumstances. And she says, would you like to read it? And then they say yes.
Okay.
And they read it in front of her. And then she says, do you have any questions? And this one young man, he was brutally beaten. He had broken bones, and he saw the pictures, and he didn't have much memory of it because he had damage. But after, Carla was kind of bracing herself, like thinking, okay, how are we going to help this child? And she goes, well, do you have any questions? And he goes, wow, God must really love me to rescue me from that. Instead of thinking, oh, wow, it could have gone both ways, understandably.
Sure.
And to think that that's where he went just made my heart melt, because you can see the hope and restoration is happening. The second chance is already in process. And only God can heal that.
Yep.
I mean, only God can come in and do something about that, because that is just unfathomable to most of us.
He sees his future as an opportunity rather than a burden.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think you're, like you said, the opposite way. It could have been like, why would he keep me alive? Or I haven't owned up to that responsibility of God keeping me alive. Instead, he's saying, I have so much to do with this life that God gave me.
Yes, I have a second chance. And it's when that spark hits and he's like, there's no stopping this child now.
That's really encouraging to hear that the kids do, go through with reading their own story, because I think, you and I know this, stories have power, and each person's story is individual to them. But I hope through this podcast that people start to realize how similar we all are in certain ways, and how much power our stories can have for other people as well that are going through similar situations. Think about how much power that kid will have for another kid that maybe comes in with a similar situation that maybe feels the opposite to him and is able to say, I kept going, and it was hard, but I kept going, and this is where I am now.
And not just that, but the impact that you and your story can have on others.
Yeah.
I have to share this really quickly. We have board members who are tremendous ambassadors for us. And there's one board member who loves to share about us. She was on her way to Kenya, and she was at the airport, and she met a gentleman right before they were on their flight to Nairobi. And he said, oh, what are you going to be doing in Kenya? And she said, well, we have a children's home there. And he said, where? So we said, Kitale. And he said, that's interesting. I'm from there, and I've never heard of you before. So he was concerned that somebody was scamming us, because you do hear of those circumstances that people give money to a children's home, but there's not really children there. She said, well, I'd love for you to come see. We have this incredible campus and school. And so she invited him to the campus the next day. Well, he came with his wife and was just very encouraged to see what was happening. And it turns out this gentleman has quite the story. He, as a boy, there's a very large slum outside Nairobi called the Kibera slum.
Okay.
He was raised in the slum, and his dad was a driver for a wealthy American. And so this driver said, that boy has potential. I see he's got potential. I want to fund his education.
Wow.
So he funded his education all the way through college. Well, this young boy ended up becoming the vice chancellor, which is basically the president of one of the largest Christian colleges in all of Africa.
Wow.
Now he's the one that my board member meets on the plane. And just at a time when we started figuring out where are we going to send our kids to college.
Exactly.
Thank you, Lord.
Wow.
And we have this partnership now with Daystar University. He's got such a heart for the orphans, knowing, there's no safety net for them. He helps them get plugged into Bible studies. He makes sure that they need, if there's counseling, they go to church, whatever it is. But think about that. His story that he was able to share and then live his life through that lens now has opened the door for all of these other kids. And it's just another example of living out not only your passion, but your destiny.
Yeah.
For what, even though it was hard circumstance, it's not hard it's not easy being raised in a slum.
Yeah.
Right? But he's using that for good. And it's just an incredible thing to see.
Yeah. And the power of just speaking up too on behalf of the Lord, because you never know where it's going to get you.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah. Speaking of college, Estha, so as I'm sure we've all guests so far is you don't want to just have them stop at that primary education level. You want them to continue into college. But of course, that takes funds. And even though you say that you've met people along the way that have helped you to reach those goals, I'm sure it can still be a struggle. So what does it take financially, emotionally, spiritually to ensure that kids not only attend school, but then graduate and move towards that independence?
Yeah. The care for each child every month is about $210.
Okay.
That includes the spiritual, the counseling especially, and food, clothing, all of the things, and the education on campus. But then the high school, most people don't realize in Kenya, the boarding school, you have to pay for it. So it's very hard for Kenyans sometimes to afford that. So we really want to make sure that we provide that for our kids, not only in high school, but college. So high school is about $1,200 a year, which if you think about it, it sounds like a lot here. But then that's really the pathway to college. College is about $3,000 a year, which would be great in this country, wouldn't it? But if you think about how the dollar stretches so far in Kenya, that it's almost like the bang for your buck goes so much further there.
Sure.
Right? So you're able to sponsor a whole year's education for a child for $3,000 or $1,500 for trade school. And trade school is really very important. Still, not everybody, just like in our country, is cut out for college. And there's so much need for the plumbers and the electricians and
100%.
all of those things that we want to make sure that we place the child in the right spot.
So are you talking those values in the U.S. amount or the Kenyan dollar?
Yes, that's the U.S. amount.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think that's actually important for people to hear because that's probably an attainable number for someone who's looking to invest in the future of a child and are looking for a specific number.
Yeah, and we really try to make that entry point feasible for people. So even at the sponsorship level, we have child sponsorships, and we do, you can sponsor a week, you can sponsor a couple of days, you can sponsor a whole month or a whole year. So there's all these different levels. You can co-sponsor with somebody else. So it's not something that's like, this is the number or nothing.
Yeah.
And, a lot of our people who sponsor children start off as babies when we get kids who are rescued. We got 22 last year again. Then they start off with the baby and they see this child grow and then they end up funding them through college and they feel like, just like the gentleman in Nairobi, they have really provided a future for this child. It's really cool to be in partnership with our donors in that regard.
Are there any kids that grow up in this environment and then go on to want to be a teacher or a counselor in the therapy department? What does that look like?
Yes, and we're just starting to see that now because our kids are graduating high school and going to college, and we have one that is going to be graduating as a counselor who wants to come back and help our kids on campus, which is beautiful to see. We have one going to law school, like I mentioned. We have one that wants to be an astronaut. That's down the line. I think that's like a middle schooler, so you know how that can go. But they have so many dreams, doctors and nurses, and some of them want to be a driver, So there's all the different pathways for them, but they have that hope for a future, which God puts in your heart. The worst thing is for them to come out and say, I have no hope. And that would be devastating. And we just see their little eyes light up when they think about their future and their education. And they really understand their education is not just something that you do that's the next step. This is my opportunity. This is my door that's opening to my future. Yeah. And it's just, I wish you could see it.
Well, I'm going to be able to go to your fundraising event in a few weeks. And I'm just so excited to be in a room of people that are just as passionate about it as you are. And like we said, I think that's sometimes the closest you can get to that type of thing. And I work in a different environment in Kenya in general, but I can still tell that the hearts of the Kenyan people are just on fire for the Lord in general.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And even just getting a taste of the joy that they have is just so special for me. I have so many friends there that I look forward to seeing every year because they're just so great.
Yeah, I agree. And, not even just the staff and the people on campus and the kids that we serve, but the people in our organization love this. They love the Lord and they love this organization. And it's almost like we get to do this together. We get to go on this journey together, this adventure that God has us on. And so I've been so blessed by the people in our organization. And you get to meet some of them. I'm very excited because they are really special people.
You actually work within a really small team in the West.
Yes,
so
very.
You're hard at work all the time. And so I'm sure there are a lot of surprises that come up, bumps in the road. You see small wins and small joys that come up that the Lord has provided. But what are some surprising things that you've been experiencing about the relationship dynamic between you, your team, and even the Rehema kids that you work with?
Well, I think that the really cool thing about having a small team is that we rely on volunteers. We couldn't do this without our volunteers,
Yeah.
you know, and so we're always looking for somebody to come and serve, whether it's at an event, whether it's going on a mission trip to Kenya, whether it's helping with social media or internships or whatever. And to do, again, you watch people grow to become to the next level of what their skill set offers is kind of like the same thing as our kids in Kenya. You see them grow, you see them thrive, you see them learning, and you see God using that in various ways. So it's a hard thing because you wear all the hats and you do all the things. And yes, sometimes things don't work out the way you hope, but that's nonprofit. And you'd be amazed when sometimes, you know, we have a dinner or a fundraiser and the timing is off or something happens and something's delayed. And people are so gracious. They are so understanding. They want you to succeed.
Yes.
Because we're all in this team together. It's not like it's us, the ministry, and them. We all play a role, you know? And so it's, again, just being on this journey together has been tremendous.
And I think to end here, our goal through this episode has been to paint a picture for someone in the West who has never been abroad or never been on a missions trip or anything like that. So to kind of wrap us up here, anyone listening in the U.S. who feels moved but unsure where to start, what are the most meaningful ways that they can help, and what impact does that support create over time?
I would say learn about us, learn about the process, what this is about, catch the vision so that a lot of times I say to people, well, what are you passionate about? Are you passionate about babies? Are you passionate about education? That's something that you can fund. Or are you passionate about just seeing the team thrive so that the kids in Kenya can do well? You can come on board and help us, like I said, in various ways on our staff. Yeah. So there's a variety of ways that people can help, but definitely there's room for everybody at the table. And I kind of like to reverse engineer that by asking, what are you passionate about? What are you good at? And let's see how we can kind of meld those two together.
Definitely. Well, thank you, Estha. I will be putting any information that will be helpful for people to learn about Rehema for Kids in the description. And Estha, this has been such an incredible conversation. Your story demonstrates the global reach of God's mission and how one woman's obedience can ripple outward to impact generations. So thank you, Estha, for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ariana, for the invitation. I really enjoyed it. You're delightful.
Oh, thank you. I have been having so much fun interviewing a fellow journalist, and it feels really cool for me to be able to talk to somebody who's been in the industry for a long time.
Yes,
so
more in that conversation later.
Yes, Estha will be joining us in another episode to talk about her past as a journalist. So I'm excited to bring her back on again. Yeah. But for the meantime, I hope that you check out Rehema for Kids and learn more about it because it's an amazing ministry and I've been so impressed by it. So thank you all for joining us on this conversation with Estha Trouw. The stories that we heard today are not just stories about need, they're stories about what is possible when love becomes consistent, when care becomes long-term, and when hope is treated like something children deserve, not something that they have to earn. Rehema's model reminds us that transformation is often quiet and slow, but it's still miraculous. And if you're interested in getting involved with Rehema for Kids, again, you can find more information in the description box below. And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and tune in next time as we continue to explore the lives of remarkable women. Until then, you are worth far more than rubies. Set about your work vigorously with arms strong for your tasks, open your arms to the poor, and extend your hands to the needy. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised.